Welcome, everyone. I am so glad that you're able to join us for really the SBIR week in the Rockies, as well as, and I'm probably, a lot of people are going to be joining now, and I'm going to be going ahead and muting people. So thanks I'll be wearing a few hats here in the next couple of minutes. My name is Ann Peterson, and I'm the Program Director for the Montana Innovation Partnership. We are a FAST awardee. That means we have received a certain set of money to support SBIR and STTR applicants within the state of Montana. And I'm glad that you're able to come with and join us for the Week in the Rockies. Some of you are outside of the Rockies, but joining us anyway. So that's great. That's great. This is a remote and virtual event. Might as well let you join us and share some of those opportunities with you. We're going to talk today about these one-on-one meetings. So I am assuming that most of you are either interested in or have expressed interest in the future scheduling a one-on-one meeting, either during the Week of the Rockies, or maybe you're going to look at that, some other opportunity, some other conference, some other time you may have a chance to meet with a topic author or a program manager for the specific agency that you're interested in. What we'll do today is we're going to talk about some basics about the SBIR program, and I'm sorry if I'm going back and forth because I am on I'm trying to mute people as well. Please mute yourself as you join, but obviously those of you who are on are already muted. We'll talk about how do you prepare for these one-on-one meetings? But one of the ways to prepare for the one-on-one meetings is to kind of revisit that SBIR program. So I'm going to go through some basics about the SBIR program, which may be a review for you. Great, fabulous. You know what? We're going to highlight some of those areas within the that basic SBIR overview as to how that's going to help you prepare to meet and talk with these topic authors or topic authors, program managers who are going to be represented at the SBIR Week in the Rockies. Let me go ahead and kind of move forward in this. And for some reason, my thing is not moving again. Mention again, I'm the Program Director for the Montana Innovation Program, Partnership Program. We are focused on helping and assisting early stage technologies in Montana. Welcome to everybody who is outside of the state of Montana. If you have any questions about your local resource providers, feel free to ping me afterwards, and I'm happy to make sure that I'm connecting you with someone like me in your area. So let's get started. I mentioned how we're going to do a little bit of an overview of the SBIR program and then preparation, how we talk to these program authors or these program representatives during the Week in the Rockies. So this is how I often start some of my SBIR one-on-ones. Let's think about this. Put your VC hat on right now. Pretend you're a venture capitalist, and I'm going to come to you with an idea. And I'm a researcher. I'm an entrepreneur. You know I have a certain amount of technical background, but I have no product. But I would love it if you would just give me $1.5 million, maybe just $250,000. To start to see if I could make this product. Let's see if it's even feasible. And then if it's feasible, give me another million or so that I can actually get that early stage prototype development. How many VCs do you think do that? How many are going to take me up on that opportunity? Very few. I would really have to have a really strong track record behind me. They'd be kind of crazy, right? They're risk takers, sure, but they're not that crazy of a risk taker. But you know who just might be that crazy of a risk taker? Our federal government. And not in a bad way, crazy like a fox. The U.S. government has set aside billions of dollars specifically to develop innovative new technologies that can meet broad societal needs as well as very specific mission needs of our agencies. And they do that through the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs. They're specifically designed to spur innovation within our economy solve important unmet pressing needs that we're facing. A lot of you have seen calls for COVID, anything that can address COVID, scaling up manufacturing to solutions, therapeutics, diagnostics across the board. That's a very brilliant, really recent example of what we need this SBIR program for. This program was started in the 1980s. It just celebrated its 38th anniversary, and it has had a huge impact. And we'll look at that in a little bit later. I'm going to rush through these quickly, again, because I want to make sure that we're getting to our program needs. And apologies, I'm going to move this up a little bit. I'm having trouble pushing things through. So what types of technologies have been funded through SBIR? Well, I think everybody here probably has one of these in their pocket. None of us have any type of smartphone that does not have some technology that was developed either in whole or in part with SBIR. Well, they all have that, I should say. They all have technologies that were developed in whole or in part with SBIR technologies, from the GPS on a chip, the Wi-Fi, the networking technologies, and all of that. So that is a huge benefit that started out with the Department of Defense applications and then moved, obviously, to our civilian everyday lives. Some other companies that you may or may not be familiar with. Enchroma, that is those are those colorblind glasses or sunglasses. And a lot of us have seen those videos. They're kind of tearjerkers, right? You know, someone shares a package and someone's so thrilled because they can actually finally see what we all see in vivid color. Enchroma started with I think that their initial, I think that's a total that they have, 3 NIH grants that helped that company launch and then scale enough to produce and get outside funding to have this successful company that we all are probably very familiar with. We've seen those all over social media and commercials. A little bit closer to home is a company called SBIR Diagnostics. Early stage startup. What's really cool about this is that it's kind of a trifecta of success. They are a technology transfer opportunity. They licensed technology from Montana State University through a research that was formerly with the University of Montana. They're based in Missoula. They sought SBIR funding to help extend the development of this early stage technology transfer, and specifically in identifying biomarkers through microRNA screening. And then they have really, based off of that success with those grants, they've been able to go on and find outside equity investments. So it's really that kind of perfect mix of some of the things that we're looking for. What we're trying to do is stimulate really important novel development, but also build strong small businesses in the nation. Another Montana success story is Visual Learning Systems. This is a company that started many, many years ago. Again, a spin out of a university, the University of Montana. And the founders there leveraged technology that had started within the University of Montana to meet both NASA as well as Department of Defense needs with specific SBIR contracts. They grew organically based with their sales as well as SBIR technology, and then they had a very successful accretive exit to a company that company was eventually also acquired by Textron Systems. So the product line is still active, still live, still being used, and it is a product line called Feature Analyst out of Textron Systems. Again, that company actually did not seek any outside investment, but it really is still another kind of one of those success stories that SBIR, it's very common with SBIR companies. And finally, before I kind of get into some other things, I just wanted to show just an example of how broadly these technologies are all around us. That we probably even being aware of SBIR, I think there's still a number of technologies that we experience or leverage every day that probably had some type of development through the SBIR program. And one example is a TED Talk that I saw several months ago. And it was really just a TED Talk. It doesn't talk about SBIR at all. It's really about using nature to influence our technology development. through Bionics, which is a company that, because I was curious, I Googled and I thought, man, I think that technology could have been an SBIR. And you know what? Sure enough, it was. This some of this technology, in particular, this TED Talk, and I can share that with you. It's a cool talk. It's about 15 minutes, like most TED Talks are. But it talks about how this gentleman who lost his legs in a climbing accident, he was a climber, how he developed really these innovative new prosthetics that are much more usable, that help athletes remain athletes in many ways. And much of the technology was developed with the support of SBIR funding. So you're in the right place, guys, if you're innovators. And I do say a quick question, are the one-on-one meetings only for Montana residents? No, not necessarily. August 13th is the priorities for Montana companies. If there are open spots available and not all of the spaces are taken by Montana companies, you can. But also there's the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. There are one-on-one meetings for all of the states that are participating in the SBIR Week in the Rockies. So you may have an opportunity to get a one-on-one meeting. It's just going to be after all of the other states have filled their spots. So why? Why should you think about SBIR? This is great, cool technology, but does it have an impact? Well, it does. And in fact, TechLink, which is really the company the organization that I work with under Montana State University, is primarily a Department of Defense partnership intermediary. That means that they focus on technology transfer between the Department of Defense as well as private industry to get DoD-sponsored development into the hands of a commercial market, a commercial company that can take it to market. We looked back at one of the other things that we do is economic impact studies. And we looked back at the whole history of the Department of Defense SBIR program. And this slide just kind of shows you some of the key impacts. What's the return on that investment? Those billions of dollars that have been sent into small businesses, do they all create these unicorns? Absolutely not. But most of them have some really great outcomes, and some of them are stellar. We've also done some impact studies for the National Cancer Institute. And here, again, you can see this kind of return on investment that this SBIR money is really helping to support huge innovation in our industries, and then by supporting these small businesses. And one final thought, why would we want to look at SBIR? What are some of the nice things about SBIR? Why bother, right? Well, it's seed funding for early stage technology, as we kind of led into, right? This is before a VC is probably going to look at you. They typically, they're going to want to see that you have, some traction in the marketplace, that you have some customers already lined up. Well, what if you have a brand new technology that still, you don't even know if it's feasible yet? The SBIR program is perfect for that type of applied technology, that early stage innovative technology. It's non-dilutive. The government is not going to take an equity stake in your company in exchange for this. You have really important intellectual property protections called SBIR data rights. And in the most recent policy initiative, those data rights were revised so that it is a 20-year protection period for that the government cannot disclose outside the government your technology. And that is a whole other webinar in and of itself. So if you have specific questions about SBIR data rights, we could talk about that offline. But it is a really important protection that you may have. And it also de-risks, as I mentioned before, based on some of the success that many early stage companies have with the SBIR program, that makes it attractive for VC. It helps with your pitch to VCs to demonstrate that these government agencies have been able to have had faith in what you're doing, enough to give you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars towards the development of this early stage technology. And there's also, really related to these data rights protections, direct the follow-on phase 3 opportunities for technologies that were developed with SBIR funding. And again, that's another webinar all in its own, but again, related to the SBIR non-disclosure for that is afforded you under SBIR data rights. There are protections. Sorry, guys, I'm just muting folks here. You can, find if your technology is right, is exactly right. It doesn't mean you're automatically guaranteed a phase 3 or follow-on funding, but in many cases, you can assert those rights to guarantee a sole source contract or additional research and development funding for the technology that you started with SBIR. So let's look at a couple of things. And this is just a quick slide. It's actually kind of a messy slide. I'm not sure if those percentages are exactly accurate, but in general, for the SBIR and STTR programs, the lion's share of the money is through the Department of Defense. And don't be deceived thinking, oh, I don't have an application that's defense related. You might be surprised. You might be surprised what they're looking for. Health related, there's a significant amount of health related technologies coming out of the Department of Defense. But it is a contracting agency. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Next is Health and Human Services, Department of Energy, NASA, and NSF. Those are the top 5 largest SBIR agencies. Those are the only agencies that participate in the STTR program. Now, I'll come back to that again in just a minute for those of you who may not be familiar with the differences between those companies or those programs. So let's look at this. Let's look at, could this be right for you? Is this, obviously you're kind of interested. You've heard about it. Let's see if SBIR and STTR might be something that you want to look at. So let's look at just small business. Are you eligible? Can you participate in this? Well, sure, probably. If you're US based, majority US owned, have fewer than 500 employees, and depending on the agency, have a limited amount of venture capital, your VC backing, if you've gotten to that point already, is limited. A full list of the eligibility requirements is on the link that's here, and I'll send these a PDF of these slides out to you afterwards. But the most important thing, I think here, small business, but that you are a for-profit business. If you're a nonprofit, no. Even if you're developing something innovative, if you've organized as a nonprofit, you are not eligible. Again, another aspect of this is that we're really, actually a key aspect is we're focusing on the national economy and really growing our innovation pipeline by growing strong companies that have commercial potential. Let's look at the small business, right? Innovation and research. So let's look at the innovation part. What types of technologies are appropriate for SBIR? Well, if you were NSF, you'd be wanting to say, blow my mind, I want really innovative, I want something that no one else has seen before, for the most part. They really novel, game-changing, gonna move the needle types of technologies that are not currently available in any form in the market space today. Has to be high risk, meaning, what does high risk mean? Well, it's gonna take some more R&D to even confirm that it's feasible, and then beyond that, to actually confirm that you can actually make a really good working prototype that has the size, weight, pricing, all of those components that are going to make it a commercially viable product. And it's going to need money to develop that. So if you have all of those things, but it only takes maybe $5,000 to develop it, go do it. I'm so happy for you. Go and get that done for $5,000. SBIR is not the program for you. This is for those innovative technologies that are really going to take hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop, if not millions. You also have to have some element of, if you build this, is it going to, one, move the needle? Will it change the way we do business or approach a certain problem? Does it have market pull? Are you going to be able to build a sustainable business and have buyers for this technology afterwards? And do you have a team Do you have the team, the expertise in order to at least get those early sales and those early partnerships that are essential to launch that early stage technology company? So those are some of the key things that we're talking about when we're talking about innovation. And I mentioned that like, oh, blow my mind, game changing. It is interesting. There are some cases, USDA might be an example, sometimes Department of Defense, where, and NIH, actually probably a lot of the agencies, if you are bringing together some things that are commercially off the shelf, perhaps, but you are doing it in an innovative, new way with an element of novelty and newness incorporated into that, that could potentially be an opportunity for SBIR. But this is also this opportunity in terms of meeting with the program manager to test whether or not your proposed innovation is kind of worthy for that specific agency, if they think that it meets the threshold of what they're looking for in an innovative technology. So you can actually address that. Many, many technologies were not developed with SBIR funding. So it doesn't mean that you have a bad idea. It just may be that it's not quite right for SBIR. Let's look at kind of that three-phase, or the other element here. I'm sorry, I'm going to make sure I'm muting everybody here. Research, so small business innovation research. What are the kind of the components of a winning proposal? And I do this generally for my one-on-one things. Obviously, this is not, one slide is not going to tell you how to write an effective, competitive phase one proposal. But I can tell you what are the things that researchers are looking for, the reviewers, what are they looking for in this? They're going to be looking for intellectual merit. They're going to look, they want to look at the strength of your approach, and that's a very NIH top way to say that, your approach, your research strategy, your statement of work, your work plan. They want to see that you have a certain amount of rigor to what you're proposing. These are not just simple engineering or manufacturing projects. These are really research components. They want to see that if this is done, that this solves a really pressing unmet need, and that if we can accomplish this research and development, it's going to move the needle. It's going to have an impact in either the way we do business. It'll overcome solving certain problems. It will accelerate finding cures for COVID, for example, things like that. It has to have some type of impact, both for the specific problem, but also economically. And they're going to look at your team. They want to look at your company, and you can be a fresh, brand new company, but you want to show that you and your team members have that background, the technical background to execute on this project, this research and development, as well as that early stage business development so that you can find those early sales. And I want to stop. Are there any questions? You can either unmute yourself or type it in the chat, and I'll make sure I'm going back and forth. I wish I need like a co-pilot for this. But I'll be watching the chat if you have any questions as we go along. Again, it's a three-phase structure. Many of you already know that. Phase one is feasibility. It's typically 6 to 12 months. Depending on the agency, it's up to usually about $250,000 for a phase one. NIH has topics waivers that can go larger than that. Some of the smaller agencies have smaller budgets for their phase one. And Air Force is actually looking at some of these small, really accelerated things where you have a small amount of money, but you have a very shortened time to accomplish that. But then you go on to phase two, perhaps. If you're invited, or if your phase two proposal is accepted, you're not automatically guaranteed a phase two, but the phase two is really, though, where you're going to get a significant more amount of money in order to do that initial prototype development. Some of the agencies, actually most of the agencies, have great support for the businesses working with those agencies. Some of them include technical and business assistance, which is another element of non-SBIR funding that you can ask for or build into your proposals to help you with some of the market research, some of the activities that help you build your business, but they're not covered by SBIR funds. There are commercialization assistance programs. There are phase zero, or before you submit, applicant assistance types of programs. So I definitely encourage you, for whichever agency that you're looking at, to make sure that you explore those supplemental resources that they have available to ensure that your SBIR project and your company is successful. And then phase 3 is, we all say it's a misnomer, right? It's not SBIR funds really. It's really more of a concept. It just means you've done it. You've taken that technology, you've built it so that it's mature enough that you can go seek more advanced research and development funding to really get it across the goalpost to a final commercial product, or you're making those commercial sales either into an agency or through commercial or civilian markets. But depending on how those sales, where those sales are, you'll have different privileges as well from the phase 3. But phase 3 is really the goal, and I just say phase 3 means it's commercialization. I'm going to say this now. So this is, again, let's take a step back. We're talking about preparing for meeting with program managers. This is a very important thing for you to think about as well. When you're meeting with the program managers as part of the SBIR Week in the Rockies, you may choose to speak with Department of Defense, and you may speak with NIH. Let's use those two as examples. Maybe you have a health-related technology that could help with the warfighter. Maybe it's something related to triage in the field, something like that. But obviously, if it's a health-related, NIH may be very interested in supporting that as well. Two very different agencies. Overall, the department or NIH is a granting agency, meaning they are investigator initiated. They want to see you come to them with an idea that can help them accomplish their research objectives for these pressing needs in America. But they're not going to tell you exactly what they want, anything specific. They have cancer research. They'd like to see maybe something around neuropathy, or how can we alleviate the side effects of cancer treatments? That's pretty vague, right? Tell them, maybe you have a very specific way to address treatment for cancer. They would like to hear your idea. Department of Defense will say, we have, in general, and I'm not going off onto the open topics. Some of you will probably say, well, what about their open topics? And I see a question up here. I'll get back to that, Kate, in a second. But Department of Defense is a contracting agency, meaning they're thinking very much in terms of procurement. They would like to see a very specific thing developed that they know addresses a very specific problem that they have. So they'll have very specific terms, topics. They still want to hear how you would solve it, but don't tell them the problem. They know their problem. They want to see how you would address it, how you would fix it. So knowing if you're talking to a contracting agency in general or a granting agency will help you as you're preparing to meet with your program manager, for whichever agency that you may be looking at. I have under here quickly a note here that NIH also has grants available, or excuse me, contracts. Their contracting is, they are asking something more specifically. They're never, more than likely, not going to be your customer. That's another aspect of contracting agencies. They can be your end customer at the end of this if everything is successful. Department of Defense, NASA, they'd like to contract with you and procure your goods and services. NIH has contracting opportunities as well, which I think you all should look at. But the reason they call them contracting is, in general, because they're not seeing enough of an investigator-initiated solutions for something that they would like to see addressed very specifically. So, like I said, maybe specific treatment to address neuropathy in cancer patients that, add some more specific, elements to that. They may issue some contract opportunities, and that really is not that they won't be your customer, but they just want it to be a little bit more specific. They want to guide the proposed solutions there a little bit more closely. And so those are things that you want to look at. I did want to address this question real quick. The difference between phase 1 and phase 0. Phase 0 is really not part of the SBIR program, but you'll see some companies or some organizations that support SBIR applicants call their program a phase 0. And really that means just before the, as you are preparing your proposal, they can provide you with some additional applicant assistance, some guidance, some mentoring, proposal reviews, things that our program does, for example. I don't use the term phase 0, but it is, that's kind of the difference between phase 1 and phase 0. Phase 0 is just what some people call their applicant assistance programs. Technical topics are issued 4 times a year by a BAA in which the agencies are looking for solutions. Yeah, exactly. So and that is specifically for, I was going to say for Department of Defense, there are actually 3 official broad agency announcements for their SBIR programs. But they also, the components are getting more and more used to doing these. I won't call them out of cycle. We used to call them out of cycle, but now we're just calling them component releases where they're outside of those 3 windows for the Department of Defense. Department of Defense and the National Institutes of Health have basically 3 main program submission windows. Let's go ahead. And here I'm going to get to a little bit that difference between SBIR and STTR, and I'm going to go through this quickly so I can make sure I get to talking about the preparation here. SBIR, it is important also, if you're thinking that you're going to be bringing a team and because you're working with a university perhaps, or you're working with a federal lab where they would be a key component of a project that you might propose under the SBIR program, you may be considering preparing this as an STTR if it's allowed. And again, I'm going kind of high level here, folks. Not all, as I said, not all agencies participate in STTR, only the top 5, the 5 with the largest budgets. And then not every single topic is necessarily allowed to be an STTR. So sometimes they will have different topics there that you can submit either as an SBIR or a STTR. Sometimes some topics they'll say, oh yeah, give us, propose either structuring it as an SBIR or STTR. And so what's the difference? Well, one, with an STTR, you are required to have an awardee that is a research institution or a federally funded research lab, like a university or maybe INL or something, one of the federal labs. You can have a sub-awardee that is a university or a federal lab. On an SBIR, you're just required to with an STTR because it's really talking about that tech transfer. You're trying to leverage either bringing technology that was developed in that lab or university into the commercial market, or as a commercial entity, you're really benefiting the university and that partnership by leveraging the expertise that that university or federal lab may have to help you advance that technology. There are also some differences in terms of the percentages of the award that you can subcontract or sub-award to a university or sub-awardee. And if it's an SBIR, you're limited in the amount of your budget that can go to that university. I'll say university in general. STTR, you could have maybe up to 60% of your award by budget go to the university. So it does. You want to think about that in terms of what would be the best for your project. And there are some SBIR tutorials I'll talk about in a minute that can help you kind of guide through. I wonder if I should, which would be the best one for my particular situation. But I just wanted to make sure that people were a little bit aware about this. And I did. I led into the online tutorials. So the online tutorials, both on the SBIR Road Tour website, there are links to some great tutorials that are good to just get started. But SBIR.gov, if you go under resources, tutorials, you'll find just some brilliantly produced tutorials about the SBIR programs, about partnering, about what is phase 3, what advantages are phase 3, agency overviews, contracting differences, accounting requirements, all of these types of things. And they're all, as I mentioned, brilliantly produced, short, consumable, maybe 15-minute types of content that you can view either by watching a video, or you could do kind of a mixed media, or you can just download a PDF that has the same content in it. So I really want to make sure that I encourage all of you to take advantage of these, as well as look at some of the specific tutorials that the SBIR Road Tour site has listed on their resources page. And if you have any questions, I'll include that after the fact as well. Okay, guys, ready? Let's go, right? We're almost ready, all right? What are some other things that we want to be thinking about before? Why are you doing this, right? We want to make sure that you've really done some assessment as to how will this technology address your specific market space. So if you're going to go talk to the Department of Defense because you think that your technology may address a specific need that they have, you should get some information about those programs and talk to some of those people. And here, these are some quotes from, again, TechLink had compiled. They looked at a number of successful Air Force SBIR awardees, and I'll say SBIR, SBIR, or STTR. They looked at all of these really successful companies that were funded with Air Force technology, and here's some of the things that they said. They're always looking at where the technology is being used and which businesses are using it. Understand your market space. Understand the current state of the art in your field. Always know your customers. Be able to name the person who will buy your product when you submit a proposal. Now, you might say that's very biased towards a contracting agency. That kind of is. That would be great. I think it's a really good advice for you to know who is a program manager, a program owner for a specific area of the Department of Defense or NASA that you would be targeting to or working with, trying to develop a business relationship with if you are successful with completing this project. So know who your customer is. But this is not bad advice if you have something that is NIH proposal, investigator initiated. If you're creating a biomedical device, you should have a really good idea of the players in your market space and who, if you're going to do channel sales, who partners you might be meeting with, working with to distribute your technology once it's developed, and the end users. Maybe it's orthopedic surgeons. You'll want to have that kind of target market identified, and certainly some of those initial people that would be early adopters of your technology. So if you can know this, you should. And then take that long view. Focus only on those projects that are going to help you with your vision for your company. Don't just do an SBIR because oh, I could do that project. I can develop that stuff. If it doesn't help you build your business, it really is not the right topic for you to submit to SBIR. Obviously, these are things, if it's a contracting agency, they want to see them done. But if it's not in line with what your business is focusing on, it's just going to distract you, and none of your things are going to get accomplished. So really do be very, very focused on the types of topics that you look to and the types of proposals that you're submitting. So I mentioned the SBIR tutorials. One of the ways to learn more about which agency may be interested in funding your technology is to take a look at those past awardees. And SBIR.gov has a great award data section of their site, and you can do a keyword search on this and pull up every award that has the term maybe endotoxin, for example. If you're doing research in endotoxins, type in endotoxins. Type in transparent armor in quotes. Anything that you might want to have in quotes, put them in quotes. and you'll find the past awards and the companies and their abstracts. So not the full proposals, but the abstracts and the companies and the funding agency for those terms. And then you can sort through those to see which may be applicable. And you might notice, oh, the Navy is doing some work in transparent armor, and that's what we're trying to focus on. And we can, you can learn a lot about whether or not they have an interest by seeing what they have funded in the past. You can also look at the other types, some of the companies that are in that space that you might not have been familiar with. Just kind of try to make sure I'm watching the chat here too. So let's look at the one-on-one. So we have, I've set an hour for this, about 18 more minutes, and actually we'll get through a lot of this. And anybody has questions afterwards, definitely feel free to ping me. But this is really a unique opportunity for you to have a chance to meet one-on-one with a knowledgeable representative from an agency that you are interested in, perhaps participating in their SBIR program. They will be somewhat of a generalist. They're not necessarily going to be intimately knowledgeable about a specific topic that an agency may have recently posted, because we're not catching all of them, but they will definitely be helpful and they'll know the people that are involved with certain topics. They will know how you can navigate these programs and give you some really great advice. So what do you want to do? What are you going to accomplish? Remember, these one-on-one meetings are going to set aside about 15 minutes of time for you to speak with a topic or a program manager from the agencies. And I have a list of all of the participating agencies on my website. I don't have that here, but Department of Defense, there are 20 different components at least. So what you want to do is look at, making the most out of these 15 minutes. So what you want to do is introduce yourself. You want to make sure that you're demonstrating that you have done your research about that agency, what that agency funds, maybe some awards that might be in a similar area to you by looking at those award searches, things like that. Don't go in and say, hey, hi, NSF, what kinds of things do you fund? Don't do that. You are selecting an agency because you do think that they're either funding similar types of projects or Department of Defense or NASA, for example. They may have a very specific need that you think you can address. So make sure that you've done your background research, and we'll talk a little bit more about ways that you can do that. Also learn, one of the things that you may learn is if there's currently an open solicitation and topic areas for some of the contracting agencies that have these windows, or if it's a granting agency like NSF or NIH, they're kind of broadly in the area. They have open times to submit. Learn if a specific topic area would be a good fit for what you're trying to address. So for example, NSF has biomedical devices, NIH has biomedical devices. NSF is going to be much more specific, kind of contained in a certain portfolio area that you can learn on their SBIR and NSF SBIR website. NIH, boy, biomedical device, I'm just pulling that kind of out of the air. What is it specifically? Would it be something that the National Cancer Institute would be interested in, or National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Disease, or National Institute of General Medicine and Sciences? So you may be able to identify by speaking with maybe someone in NIH who might be the best person to further speak to within that SBIR program at that agency to understand a little bit more how you can address specific needs. But you'll also really get a good sense of whether they feel that what you are trying to propose would fit under their research objectives, and that it has kind of that novelty and innovation that they are looking for. Oh, and I see about pitch competitions too. Yeah, we'll talk about some of those things. We'll talk about different, one of the things that you'll learn from each of these NSF or Department of Energy or NIH are some of the specific next steps that you may need to take with each of those agencies in order to participate. Like I said, you can ask them what are those next steps, and then also make sure that you take advantage of saying, "Gosh, what are some of the things that you see that companies are doing wrong? I want to make sure I don't do the same thing," and they'll be happy to share some of the things that they see companies doing wrong that really eliminate their chances of winning an award with those companies, or with those agencies, excuse me. So before the meeting, what you want to do is get to know the agency. You want to review the current or the most recent solicitation and topics, and we'll toggle over to that in a couple of minutes. Review those SBIR.gov tutorials that I referred you to. They're brilliant. You will gain a bunch of information in a really short amount of time. And then prepare a quad chart. We'll talk about that. So I mentioned getting to know the agency. We've talked about that a number of times, right? Just to understand the SBIR program for that agency. First, you can go to SBIR.gov, the tutorials. You can look at the award data, see what has been funded for your area of expertise, be knowledgeable about which agencies have funded things like that before, and then look at the agency's SBIR site. And that often is as simple as Googling agency name like NIH, SBIR, and one of those top results will be their SBIR website. They all will have different formats for how their SBIR sites are. I would love to say it's agency.sbir.gov. It's not all the time. So take a look at that. What's great about the agency-specific SBIR website, SBIR.gov is brilliant. We love them. But the agency-specific websites are going to talk to you much more specifically about when are their solicitation schedules, what's currently open, how do you participate. One of the things about how to participate is understanding their specific review process. How are reviewers going to assess the technical merit, the impact, and the company and team of your proposal? So they outline that on their SBIR websites. Every single agency says this is how we review proposals. And by knowing that, you are really setting yourself up to understand how that SBIR program works for that particular agency. Often, many of them have sites also where you can look at past awards as well. So it'll be specifically just those that were funded in the NSF portfolios, for example. And then you also can look at the agency's general overall research objectives, their strategic plans. How would your technology fit into helping them accomplish their strategic goals? I think that's really something that many people miss, and I think it's very well worth looking into. Again, sometimes from the SBIR websites, you can find their specific research areas that they're looking to fund with SBIR. But in general, look at that agency strategic objectives documents. Somewhere it's out there. There's many out there. All of the National Institutes of Health have sub-agencies, for example, like National Cancer Institute, National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, NIAID. They will have kind of their research focus areas. You want to take a look at that, because when you can articulate how your technology will help them address that need, that's going to be very, very important for you. Let me kind of continue on with this. Another thing that you can make sure that you're accessing, and we talked about that, take a look at the recent solicitations. If they do not have a current open solicitation or it's in pre-release for topics, DoD will be coming out with a pre-release of new topics in August that will be, and then the solicitation will be open in September, but you'll have that opportunity to kind of look at some of their topics. They currently have some topics available for DARPA, and AFWERX has an STTR open right now. You'll want to look at their topic areas, kind of see what they're funding. And if they don't have something currently open, often you can find their most recent, their past solicitation. That's going to help you understand what they have funded before and help you prepare to consider if the next time they have a window open for SBIR solicitations, some type of funding opportunity announcement, that you may be a fit. Most of the contracting agencies, you're not going to repeat. They will not be repeating the topics, so don't expect topics to be repeated if it's Department of Defense or NASA. However, Department of Defense has some open topics, and that, again, is another area for a different discussion. Feel free to ping me offline if you have more questions about that. NSF and Department of Energy. Department of Energy currently has topics out in pre-release now. You can download a document that shows all of their topics for this current solicitation release. So if you are considering setting up a one-on-one meeting with the Department of Energy, you should be familiar with what their current topic areas for this release are. And if you fall outside of any of those topics, you want to look at last year's release 2 for the Department of Energy and still be prepared. They won't probably have quite the same topics. They are a granting agency, but they're kind of acting like a contract agency that way. But you can still talk to the program manager about your specific area. And similarly, NIH, NSF, I didn't put a slide back here. I just picked 3 of them, but National Science Foundation has portfolio areas. What's really brilliant about the National Science Foundation is that they require for each potential applicant who is interested in submitting a phase 1 proposal to submit a project pitch. And you can learn more about the project pitch on NSF. I did a project pitch or demonstration a couple of weeks ago. Time is getting away from me. Maybe it was just last week. But we talked about what are the elements of a really strong project pitch. How do you want to prepare for those as well? But that's really outside of that. But that is similar to kind of what you're trying to do with these speaking with program managers. You just have a very, very small amount of time, and they're not going to give you a go, no-go on whether or not you can or cannot submit a proposal. It's just helping you learn more about whether or not that's going to be the right fit for your technology. I mentioned the online tutorials. I just had to bring them up again. Make sure you take advantage of those. Let's look at this quad chart a little bit. What is a quad chart? Why would you use a quad chart? And how can it help you in these meetings? Well, one of the things that you're going to be required to do when you set up your meeting, some of you may have already set up your one-on-one meeting, but in your profile, and that's handled by Dawn Breaker, who is helping support the SBIR Road Tour nationally. You will have received an email from Judy at SBIRroadtour.com. Thank you, I think, SBIRroadtour.com, and she will be scheduling the one-on-ones with you. You'll have the access to your profile. You'll want to upload your quad chart into your profile so that the agencies that you meet with can get just a quick snapshot of what is the technology that you're looking to develop, who is your company and team, what's the research need, why do you need this funding, what's going to be accomplished with this, and then what's the opportunity, what's the market space? Are you going to be addressing a very specific warfighter need, or are you trying to really shift the market space on COVID therapeutics or some other area that maybe an agency is not going to buy, but the civilian market would? So you want to be addressing all of those. And let's go ahead and take a look at some of those. But by uploading this ahead of time, the person that you schedule your meeting with will be able to review this ahead of time. So you don't have to rehash all of this. You can actually just kind of get busy to introducing yourself, talking briefly about, touching briefly on what the quad chart says, but then asking the questions so that you can listen and learn from the program manager. So what we want to do here, I'm going to look at 2 different examples. This is the standard example, and actually one of these is on my website, has a little different header. This one is kind of stretched out. So you have an example of a quad chart on the Montana Innovation Partnership.org website, probably on the SBIR Road Tour website as well, that you can download and use. But what you want to do is include, make sure you have your contact information, your company information is up there, how to get a hold of you, but also then the technology development. What is it? Do not use proprietary terms. Do not share proprietary information. It's just what it does, not how you do it. Tell how advanced is it? How mature is this? And then what needs to be done to take it to market? What is the additional research component that's required to get this to this final market? And that you'll address in the research needs. You'll also want to make sure that you're giving a good company introduction. Tell them who your team is. How can you, what's your background, your expertise? Why you? Why would you be the right person to be supporting this? And then make sure that you address the opportunity. And this overlaps, but in a very much more distilled way with what NSF is actually asking for in their project pitch. Tell them a little bit about your technology. Tell them about the problem that it addresses. Why is this important to address? If the impact of addressing this problem is small, should you really bother? Address how important it is. What's the impact if this can be done? Make sure that you know who your customer will be, your target market. If you know them by name for DoD, for example, brilliant. Include as specific as you can possibly get. And then make sure that you're addressing kind of that market opportunity, that you understand the size of your market, the types of distribution models that may be best for getting your product into the market space in that little box. Answer all those questions in that little box. But this is really helpful. This helps you to really kind of set the stage for the meeting, and it helps that program manager really understand, boy, they've clearly thought this out. They have a strong technology. It looks pretty innovative. They understand what they need to do for the next steps, what their research need is, how they would use this money, and they have a pretty strong team, and they know they've been doing research on the market. They're doing this because they think that they actually can develop a product at the end. Again, commercialization is the goal for the SBIR program. Whether you're getting that into the hands of a warfighter or a NASA mission, or if you're just trying to address a broader societal need that NSF or NIH or some of the other agencies may be addressing. Here's another example. And I just want to show this because some of you might have a little bit more mature technology. Maybe you've done SBIR already and you have some technology that still needs some additional work. Or you have a very specific market with DoD, for example. Maybe you're already working with them and you're going to use some SBIR funds to continue development of a specific project area. You may want to include a picture of what, or it could be a design. Again, nothing proprietary. Don't give away your secrets, but if you have started to develop something, if you have a picture, you can include that as well. But again, I would say when in doubt, go ahead and default to that standard one that the SBIR Road Tour team has sent out, because they'll just be expecting this. They'll be expecting to look at technology development, research need, company introduction, and opportunity, because they're going to be having hundreds of meetings with folks. Any questions about that? I don't see any. So as you're preparing after you prepare your quad chart, make sure that you are preparing some questions for the agency when you're meeting with the Department of Defense. We talked about back here. Let me go ahead and go back to this slide. I'm going to go maybe too far back. There we go. What are you going to accomplish? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to introduce yourself. So I might say, hi, okay, it's 4 o'clock, 2 more minutes, guys. Thanks, we started 2 minutes afterwards. We'll kind of wrap this up quickly, but here's an example. If I'm going to have a one-on-one meeting with a program manager, say I want to meet with the Navy, for example. I'm going to step in, I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Ann Peterson. I'm with Eiley Materials. And I've been looking over some of the topics and the research focus areas of the Navy. Eiley Materials, we produce novel ceramic materials for transparent armor and some of the other applications where the current transparent materials have proven either too costly or hard to produce. We have facilities in Bozeman, Montana, and we have university and commercial partnerships with optics crystal growth technology companies, finishing and coating industries. And I noticed that the Navy has funded SBIR contracts related to the service life and applications of transparent armor. I know some of the companies are Triton and Luna. We certainly recognize those as potential partners and competitors in our field. I really would love to, I'm really looking forward to talking with you to learn more about our product development and how that might meet some of the Navy's needs. And then you stop, and then you start into some of the questions about how your technology may fit. So you've given them a very brief overview of yourself, and then you start in with asking questions of that SBIR representative from the Navy about the applicability of your technology in transparent armor, for example, to the Navy's needs. You can ask them, who do you know, or who are the programs, which programs, who should I talk to maybe learn more about how we might address specific program needs. Go ahead and ask certain questions like that when you're talking with the program manager. That can be a very helpful question so that you can identify some of the next steps. And that, as before, was one of those next steps questions you should ask in there. Each of those, like, so what would you recommend I do next? If you think that it's worth that agency has confirmed that they might be a good fit for you, you want to ask what are the next steps that they recommend. And finally, before we go on, thank you guys for staying on a little bit longer for this. And you want to make sure that you're familiar with the SBIRroadtour.com, their about page. They just recently posted a couple of additional videos here about the SBIR overview and all of the agency introductions. Also on their resource page, they have a video from the Department of Homeland Security on the do's and don'ts of meeting with program managers. And they set up two different examples of someone coming in there and really just doing it wrong, not taking advantage of the opportunity to meet with this program manager, and then someone who really does it right, who sets it up so that they can learn as much as they possibly can about the SBIR program and that particular agency's needs. So with that, guys, I am going to go ahead and stop. Thank you. But I will stay on the line if anybody can stay on the line. If you have questions, feel free to post them in chat or go ahead and unmute yourself. And I'm happy to, you can kind of an ask me anything session right now. So I'll stay on for a few more minutes. But again, thank you. I see some of you going out. Thanks so much for your time. Look forward to seeing you the week of August 10th. So Tizak, I noticed you mentioned about speaking about the pitch competitions. I'd love to. Again, from the timing, just didn't have time to go into kind of all of those different opportunities. But that would be a great question for people who perhaps are meeting with Air Force, they will be participating, to maybe talk a little bit more about some of their other outside pitch competitions that they're running. Any questions? Any takers? I see no chats and no one unmuting. You should be able to unmute yourself. All right. Well, if there's no questions, you guys, thank you so much. Kept you 5 minutes after the hour. I'm so grateful for your time. Again, thanks. I look forward to talking with everybody, and I will end this down. Feel free to ping me via email if you want to set up some other time to talk, and or I can maybe, if you're not in Montana, I'm happy to introduce you to other folks as well that you can talk with. But I won't shut you down. I'll talk with you too. Bye, everyone.